I want to start off with today's discussion by telling you of something that really happens when you die without a will. And let me be very straight. Yeah, if you die without a will, your estate gets into what we call intestacy, simply meaning that there was no will. And immediately, of course, we understand that your spouse or your family members will need to go to court and get something we call letter of administration. And finally, the court. This is where the court now gets to decide who gets what. Sometimes it's very, very difficult. It's painful, a painful process. You may wait for 2, 3 years before this is settled. And we understand that you are not the only person who has a succession case. You have millions of people who actually have never even thought of setting up will or anything for inheritance. And that is why I want us to have this candid conversation because it's the most brutal, the most expensive phase of someone's life, and unfortunately happens when you're not there. So um, I want us to use illustration so that you can get what really happens. The first process once your spouse or your family members go to court, the court uses what we call priority. That means that if you had a spouse, it comes first. Second are children, third are parents, fourth are siblings, and lastly is the extended family members or relatives. And that concludes one thing that your siblings actually have a right to claim something from your estate, and it can happen, and that can delay the way your property is distributed for a couple of years because each one feels entitled to get something out of you. That is why I want to urge you, yeah, to think about how your wealth will be distributed, and you don't necessarily need to be so wealthy. You just need to be modest in what you own and strategic. Yeah. So if and I want to use a simple scenario for people who just have three things, which are the basic. You have a piece of land, you have a home, you have a biashara. Uh, if you die without having written anything, one thing is for sure, your business may actually collapse because sometimes we do not give credentials of our bank account to to our spouses. So what happens? They can't access any amount until they take the letter of administration to the bank. Yeah, meaning that your business may actually collapse after you are gone within a very, very short time. Second is that if you had a land, your spouse cannot sell until the case is concluded. And let's say you had a house, possibly that is the only asset that is easily accessible. However, we've seen cases where where siblings have actually kicked out women with their children out of their matrimonial home simply because they want to actually get or they are claiming to have some right to ownership of that house. That is why it's important, even as you do what you do, to think of why it is important to plan for your inheritance. Yeah. So this month, I want us to dive into this particular area so that it can become very, very easy for you, even as you start that process. And as I said, you basically have two ways of establishing a, a will or an inheritance plan. Let me not call it a will. One is using what we call trust fund, and secondly is what we call a will. So those are the two major ways. Allow me to break this down in our next episode. This was just but an introductory episode of what I want to do for the whole of this month. So, guys, yeah, I will leave you with just one thing. If you do not If you do not plan for how your assets should be distributed, the government will step in, and the results are not as smooth as appeasing as I would wish. So that is why I want us to have this conversation. So thank you guys. I will see you in our next episode.